A woman pushes through a wall of heat and bodies, bleeding onto the dust of a Galilean road, defining a reality. The real question of these encounters isn't, how did he heal them? It is this: what exactly was he giving them? Because while your physical body is simply sitting perfectly still, gripping a steering wheel, you are occupying one physical space. But your consciousness is shattered across a dozen different digital and emotional timelines. We do not live naked in ancient burial caves, but we are a species profoundly divided against ourselves. We have accepted a deeply fractured existence as the standard cost of doing business in the modern world. If your body breaks down, you take it to a physician to manage the cellular chemistry. If your mind begins to collapse under the crushing weight of the week, you take it to a therapist to manage the trauma. And if your soul feels entirely hollowed out, you take it to a church building on Sunday morning to ensure it eventually goes to heaven. We have completely compartmentalized our humanity. We treat ourselves like a collection of separate, disconnected parts that have absolutely nothing to do with one another. We have constructed an entire modern theology to support this exact division. We have convinced ourselves that as long as our spiritual destination is secure, the chronic exhaustion of our bodies and the frantic chaos of our minds are simply temporary burdens we are forced to endure. But the creator of the human nervous system does not negotiate with fragments. Your physical body is not a disposable container for your soul. The specific word he speaks over their shattered physical bodies is the exact same word the New Testament uses to describe what happens to your. It is the sacred architecture where heaven is supposed to dwell. When the New Testament writers use the word sozo, they are pushing back against this exact modern fragmentation. They are declaring that Jesus did not come to rescue a fraction of you. The gospel is not a cosmic salvage yard where God extracts your invisible spirit and leaves your physical reality to rust in the dirt. It is a total reclamation project of the human being. To be made whole is to have the borders between your physical, mental, and spiritual life completely torn down. But how did this comprehensive restoration actually get purchased? To understand the mechanism that makes this kind of profound wholeness possible, you cannot just look at the miracles in the dirt of Galilee. The healing does not peak in the streets of Capernaum. You have to look at what happens when the healer himself is finally broken. The iron rings against the bone. A hammer falls. A body tears. The rough wood splinters under the weight of a suffocating man. The midday sky above the execution site turns the color of a bruised plum. The dirt at the base of the timber drinks the blood of the healer. A crowd gathers in the sudden darkness. The soldiers gamble for a seamless coat. The women weep in the dust. Su'al. It is a word that modern religion has drastically flattened. Most people assume the word saved just means going to heaven. We have turned. The religious leaders stand at the front of the mob. They watch his lungs fight for a single breath of oxygen. They watch his muscles spasm in the heat. They demand a geographical rescue. They want him to pull himself off the timber. They want him to prove his power by escaping the pain. And they hurl their insults at his fractured frame. Look at Luke chapter 23, verse 35. They sneer at the dying rabbi. They shout, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's Messiah." The specific Greek verb they hurl into the dark sky, sozo. He sozo at others. Let him sozo himself. They use the exact word that healed the bleeding woman in Capernaum. They use the exact word that restored the screaming madman in the Gerasene tombs. They think it is a taunt. They think it is the ultimate proof of his failure. But they are accidentally declaring the fundamental mechanics of the cosmos. The healer cannot save himself because the healer is actively being unmade. He is experiencing the absolute extreme of human fragmentation. His physical body is ripped open by Roman whips and forged spikes. His mind is plunged into the terrifying psychological isolation of being entirely forsaken. His soul is crushed under the infinite, suffocating gravity of human rebellion. Every boundary is breached. Every part is splintered. Put it into a legal transaction. A theological receipt. A future guarantee about where you go when your heart stops beating, leaving you to simply wait. He is completely absorbed into the absolute center of human destruction. The cross is not the tragic end of a failed revolution. It is the violent transaction of wholeness. He is being dismantled so that you can be reconstructed. His biological death pays for your biological resurrection. His mental anguish absorbs your psychological chaos. His spiritual separation bridges your eternal divide. He was shattered so you could be gathered up. But the transaction does not stay locked in the ancient dirt of Golgotha. The grave cannot hold the pieces. And the reality of what steps out of that tomb changes exactly how you are supposed to live tomorrow morning. The heavy stone is rolled back in the quiet, damp dark of a Sunday morning. The lungs that collapsed on Friday afternoon pull in the cold air of a new garden. A heart that had stopped beating entirely resumes its rhythm, pumping blood through veins that no longer carry the infection of mortality. The resurrection is not merely a theological vindication of a murdered rabbi. It is the prototype of an entirely new physical reality. When the New Testament writers reflect on the power of the empty tomb, they describe the application of Sozo using grammar that completely defies our modern obsession with a one-time transaction. Out the clock here on earth. But Jesus was not offering a bumper sticker. He was diagnosing a human condition. Salvation is not an evacuation. We want a simple past tense. We want to say we were saved on a specific date. And now we are simply waiting in the lobby of the universe. But the Greek language refuses to let us sit still. The ancient texts speak of Sozo in 3 distinct timelines. You have been saved from the ultimate penalty of your rebellion. You will be saved from the presence of destruction when the earth is finally remade. But when Paul writes to the church in Corinth, he describes believers as a people who are being saved. It is a present, continuous verb. It is a real-time, ongoing medical procedure. The divine physician is not just handing you a prescription and telling you to wait for heaven to fill it. He is actively operating on the fractured pieces of your humanity while you are still breathing the air of this broken world. Salvation is not a static legal status. It is the aggressive, present-tense integration of your body, your mind, and your soul. This means the physical healing you beg for, the clarity you fight for in your mind, and the forgiveness, if you seek for your soul, are not 3 different categories of divine intervention. They are the exact same project. God is not ignoring your crushing anxiety while He secures your eternal destination. He is systematically dismantling the chaos in your nervous system, pulling the splintered fragments. Plan. It is a reconstruction. To feel the weight of what that actually means, you have to strip away centuries of church jargon. You have of your attention back into the center of His presence. You are being Sozo, Ed. It is the slow, deliberate work of learning how to become fully human again in a culture that profits from your fragmentation. Every time you refuse the bait of endless digital outrage, you are participating in your salvation. Every time you release the bitterness against the person who shattered your trust, you are allowing the restorative, the work of the cross, to knit your emotional tissue back together. But this comprehensive rescue operation eventually has to reach the most intimate, hidden corners of your own life. Because the reality of this ancient word eventually forces a collision with the very specific pain you are carrying in your chest right now. A bleeding woman reached into the Galilean dust, and her physical body was made entirely whole. A screaming madman shattered his iron chains, and his fractured mind was brought back to peace. A blind beggar shouted over the Jericho crowd, and his dark eyes were flooded with light. A sinner confessed in a Roman letter, and his eternal soul was pulled from the wreckage. A dying rabbi was nailed to the splintered wood, and a broken cosmos was violently reconstructed. To step back into that crushing, suffocating crowd in Capernaum, long before the theology textbooks were written, you have to feel the dirt on her. A heavy stone was rolled away in the damp dark, and a new physical reality walked out of the grave. A fragmented generation scrolls through the modern noise, and the exact same power is still gathering up the pieces. One word, one restoration. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the Capernaum Street. 12 years of waking up as a walking contagion. 12 years of neighbors stepping away from her in the market. When her fingers brushed the hem of his coat, he didn't just stop the bleeding in her veins. He stopped the entire crowd. He looked at a woman who had been swallowed entirely by her disease. And he called her daughter. He didn't just fix her biology. He gave her back her humanity. If you are in a season where you feel completely divided against yourself, where your mind is a chaotic loop of anxiety, your body is carrying chronic exhaustion, and your soul feels utterly hollowed out, do not accept the lie that salvation is just an evacuation plan. The healer is not asking you to drag your broken fragments across a distant, heavenly finish line. Hands. Because the moment her fingers brush the woven threads of his coat, the story pivots. He is stepping into the crushing crowd of your present tense. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who feels like their faith is just a waiting room. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who refused to leave our bodies to the dirt and our minds to the dark walk with you through your own splintered moments and gently gather up every fractured piece of your life until you are entirely, beautifully whole. We treat salvation like a departure ticket. We print it on glossy paper tracks. We preach it under fluorescent church lights. We sing about flying away from the struggles of this earth when the final trumpet sounds. The modern definition of being saved is almost entirely geographical. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed wool and sweat. The crowd is crushing. A chaotic mass of elbows and shoulders pressing in on a rabbi. You are here. You want to be there. The transaction is treated like a spiritual passport. It is a document stamped with invisible ink, locked in a theological safe, guaranteeing your entry into a golden city while the current world burns down around you. We have turned the most violent, disruptive force in the cosmos into a fire insurance policy, a waiting room, a holding pen, a cosmic evacuation plan. We tell ourselves, we just need to survive the chaos of our physical bodies and our broken minds until the rescue ship finally arrives. But that is not how the first century mind understood the concept of divine rescue. To the ancient Hebrew imagination, the Creator is not trying to evacuate his people from the physical world. He is trying to reclaim the physical world. He is not pulling you out of the dirt. He is reaching his hands into the dirt, shaping the clay, and breathing into it until it becomes fully human again. The separation between the spiritual and the physical was never meant to be permanent. Salvation is not an exit strategy. It is an invasion. It is the reality of heaven crashing into the fractured, bleeding reality of the present tense. When we reduce this word to merely mean escaping to heaven when we die, we strip it of its immediate power. We accept a life of profound brokenness, believing that healing is strictly reserved for the other side of the grave. We carry our trauma, our hidden addictions, and our chronic pain, making his way to the house of a dying girl. For 12 years, this woman's body has been a slow leak of life. Like heavy luggage, we are simply forced to drag to the finish line. But the text demands something radically different. If you want to understand how that heavenly invasion actually works, you have to look at what happens when the rabbi suddenly stops walking. You have to go back to the Galilean dirt. Because in the middle of that suffocating Capernaum crowd, the transaction that is about to take place has absolutely nothing to do with the afterlife. The dust kicks up under 100 sandals. The heat of the Galilean afternoon presses down like a physical weight, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and the sea. The crowd is a surging river. She crawls through a forest of legs, her lungs burning, her hands coated in the dirt of the street. 12 years of waking up exhausted. 12 years of watching her money drain away to physicians who offered remedies but only delivered agony. By the law of Leviticus, she is a walking contagion. Every time she sits on a chair, the chair becomes unclean. Every time she brushes past a neighbor in the market, she defiles them. She has not been hugged in over a decade. She is not just dying. She is already a ghost. And she extends a trembling hand. Her fingers catch the blue thread. She has spent every copper coin she had on physicians who only made the pain worse. By the religious laws of her people, she is unclean, untouchable, at the hem of his garment. and the world stops spinning. The fountain of her blood dries up instantly. You can almost feel the silence inside her body. The violent, tearing pain of 4,000 days vanishes in a single heartbeat. A surge of absolute restoration floods her nervous system. And then the rabbi stops walking. Who touched my clothes? The disciples think it is a joke. The street is a crush of shoulders and elbows. People are stepping on his toes. Everyone is touching him, but Jesus knows the difference between the friction of a crowd and the pull of desperation. He turns. He waits. She falls at his feet, trembling, the dust clinging to the tears on her face. She braces for the condemnation. She has broken the law by being in this crowd. She has made a holy teacher ritually unclean. She tells him the whole truth. But the rabbi looks down at a woman whose identity has been entirely swallowed by her disease. He is not just fixing her biology. He is rewriting her reality. He calls her daughter. It is the only time in the recorded Gospels he uses this specific term of endearment for a woman. And then he speaks a sentence that we have been flattening for 2,000 years. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And she is reaching for the fringe of the rabbi's cloak. She reaches in the dust. A naked man screams and cuts himself with stones. At least, that is what the English ink says on the page. That is how our modern translations neatly categorize the event. A physical miracle for a physical problem. But when you peel back the English translation and look at the actual syllable he speaks over her trembling body, you find a word that shatters our modern boundaries. Because there is a detail hiding in plain sight in the original text. And the verb he actually chooses to use is the key that unlocks the entire New Testament. Look at Mark chapter 5, verse 34. Jesus is standing over a woman whose physical body has just been miraculously knit back together. And our English Bibles translate his final response to her as, "Your faith has made you well," or "Your faith has healed you." The translation makes logical sense to our modern minds. She was physically sick. Now she is physically healthy. But the word the original Greek manuscript uses for made well in this verse is the verb sozo. It is a word with a massive, undeniable footprint in the biblical text, appearing over 100 times in the New Testament. Its foundational meaning is to rescue from destruction, to keep safe and sound. But the way the gospel writers deploy this specific word across their accounts among the tombs of the Gerasenes. A blind beggar shouts over the noise of the Jericho foot traffic. Same desperate collision with Jesus of Nazareth completely shatters our modern theological categories. Because sozo translates to heal, it translates to deliver from danger. It translates to restore to wholeness. If the realization that these ancient texts hold a depth that modern religion rarely talks about is stirring something in your chest, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So let's trace this ink across the rest of the New Testament. When the Apostle Paul sits down to write what will become the bedrock of Christian theology in Romans chapter 10, verse 9, he dictates these famous words. If you declare with your mouth, Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. The Greek word Paul uses for that eternal, spiritual salvation, sozo. It is the exact same verb. When James writes about the prayer of faith, saving the sick, he uses sozo. When Jesus tells the blind beggar in Jericho that his faith has healed him, he uses sozo. When the angel tells Joseph that Mary's child will save his people from their sins, he uses the exact same root. That linguistic overlap changes everything. We have spent centuries splitting the human experience right down the middle. Same outcome again and again. Most people assume these are just miracle stories. We read them as historical proof of divine power. A highlight reel. We put physical healing in one neat, earthly box, and we put spiritual salvation in a separate, heavenly box. We treat the physical body as a temporary shell and the soul as the only thing that matters, separating the tangible dirt from the divine breath. But the original language refuses to make that division. The Greek text does not stutter. Salvation is not a fragmented rescue of a disembodied spirit. It is the comprehensive restoration of your entire being. To be saved in the biblical sense is not merely to receive a ticket to the afterlife. It is to be brought back to your original design. It is the healing of your biology, the forgiveness of your soul, and the gathering up of every fractured piece of your humanity. We see Sozo applied to a bleeding body in a Galilean crowd. We see it applied to a sinful soul in a Roman letter. But to understand the true, aggressive power of this word, you have to watch it collide with a mind that has completely lost its grip on reality. The wood of the boat scrapes against the gravel. The disciples are still shivering from the storm. The water of the lake is finally calm, but the land is not. A scream tears through the morning air. It is guttural. It is not entirely human, meant to show that God can fix broken bodies and silence chaotic minds. And they are that. But if you look closer at the exact vocabulary, a man charges down the hill from the burial caves. The smell of rotting flesh and stale sweat clings to his skin. He wears no clothes. He wears only the rusted iron remnants of broken chains. The townspeople have tried to bind him for years. The shackles always snap. The ropes always tear. He spends his nights screaming into the empty dark. He slashes his own chest with jagged pieces of flint. His mind is not a mind. It is a battlefield. It is a fractured, splintered nightmare of 1,000 overlapping voices. Jesus steps out of the boat. He does not flinch. He does not retreat. He speaks a single command into the chaos. The voices beg. The demons flee. A massive herd of pigs rushes violently down the steep cliff. The water crashes and swallows them whole. And then, the townspeople arrive. They walk out from the city to investigate the destruction. They expect to find the madman screaming. They expect to find fresh blood on the rocks. Instead, they find a terrifying silence. The man is sitting at the feet of Jesus. He is wearing clothes. He is speaking normally. His mind is perfectly, impossibly clear. They are more terrified of the cure than they were of the disease, because this kind of power dismantles everything they know. Look at Luke chapter 8, verse 36. The text says that those who had seen the event, Jesus uses when he responds to them. You start to see something the standard miracle reading completely misses. He is not just displaying power. He is told the others how the demon-possessed man had been cured. But read the original Greek. The word used by Luke is sozo. The madman was saved. This changes the entire scope of the rescue mission. Sozo is not just a bleeding blood vessel closing up in Capernaum. It is a shattered mind clicking back into place in the Decapolis. It is the violent eviction of chaos. It is the gathering of the fragments. Salvation is not a polite theological agreement. It is a hostile takeover of stolen property. The bleeding woman's biology was sozoed. The Gerasene man's tortured psychology was sozoed. The sinner's soul is sozoed. He was restored. He was delivered. He was made entirely whole. Body, mind, soul. Same exact word. Same exact restoration. But this splintering of the human self did not end in the ancient burial caves of the Middle East. That exact same fragmentation is happening right now. And you do not need a graveyard for it to take root. You wake up and reach for a glowing piece of glass before your eyes even fully adjust to the morning light. You carry a low-grade, chronic hum of anxiety in your jaw and your shoulders as you sit in highway traffic. Your mind is violently scrolling through a dozen different theoretical scenarios, agonizing over conversations that have not even happened yet.